Hi, everybody. Let's just move this down a bit. Great. Good. I hope everyone is doing well and looking forward to the seminar coming up. We have a few questions here. I'm not sure whether some of these questions were sent in for the seminar, but nonetheless, I'll do what I can on this one. This one is a question sent in by Toshi, and it goes something like this. I think that most of the time when we do exercises, we try to ignore the body and concentrate either through the body or space around us. I would like to make a comment about that. One thing for sure that I've said quite a number of times, the body is very important. And it's important to use it as a mirror. Remember, there's energy in the body and through the body and all around the body. And I'll talk a little bit about that. One of the biggest difficulties, I think, though, is that each and every one of us will interpret things the way they believe things should be understood. And this is pretty normal in our world, myself included, everyone. It does the same thing. And that's interesting because when you are looking at things and you have an interpretation, we need to remember it's only one option. Especially when you're dealing with energy. As you know, I always talk about the fact that this physical form, our emotional disposition, and the way we engage mentally related to perception and trying to make sense of things, this is all an energetic form. Everything is energy there. If there's some mix-up about that, please believe me, this is all energy. It's just concretized form. And that's registered by us through these visual structures, these eyes that we have, and all the way back into the visual cortex, back in here, and then you try to make some sense of things. And our brain and nervous system is used to making sense based on these particular planes that we're on. If you are slightly, let's say, ever so slightly clairvoyant, you will begin to notice some colors in and around people, but that will be very interestingly linked up to the physical form. You'll see the physical form and you won't be seeing things relative to the adverse of a color. You'll be seeing things as they relate to a particular frequency or ray, whatever you want to call these things. Because your eyes are shifting a little bit within the physical structure, because your personality has to make sense of things when that occurs. So it relates the body, the emotions, the mind. And you are taking a look at something, and if you have a list of what those colors should mean, and there are many lists with not necessarily the same ideas involved with each one of those colors, you will find yourself leaning towards a certain way of looking and assessing, and you'll come up with an idea based on that, and therefore you'll assess the other person in some way that relates to those frequencies, and you will believe that you're right. This is what we do all the time. Considering yourself right or wrong or in those circumstances, I would suggest consider those ideas as a possibility. It's always better to look at things from a positive perspective, from my point of view, the best you can, the best your personality will allow you to do. And that personality is basically hinged upon how you were brought up and how you think things should be and how valuable your thoughts are to you and therefore should be to other people. This is a very important statement that I'm making because it applies to everybody on this planet. So, in relationship to energy, because this is one of the primary focuses that we spend a lot of time on, energy in relationship to the physical, emotional, or mental, or some people would say higher state, or soul, or other words that you can use. We have already addressed these images and set up colors for them, assumptions and beliefs, and quite a bit of critical assessment. Unfortunately, our world is based on being critical to some degree, and it is that way since we need to be careful in the world that we live in, so to speak. So, what we're dealing with here is energy everywhere, in you, through you, all around you. And the personality itself is actually energy. It's rudimentary, of course, to think that our energy is better than somebody else's energy. I mean, that's kind of a statement that is often expressed. In fact, often the engagement with energy is different than another person, not better or worse, but or used for different purposes. And this is vital to begin to understand. Our particular way of engaging as a personality has been cultivated like plants in a field and watered or repeated over and over and over again in particular ways that are assumed to be of value because you're doing it. And this is normal in how we think, but it's not necessarily as real as what we believe. Nonetheless, as energy, as we being energy, us being energy forms, energy can pass through those energy forms. You can intensify and express in certain manners that are using the energy that you have within you for purposes related to what you believe you think you need to do. Still related to comforting your view of how a personality should be, and maybe not everyone's, but just yours. This is a key thing to try and understand. It's a little bit too much for me. Thank you. There you go. And what we're dealing with here, is a conglomerate of energies that we relate to. You interact with me, I interact with you. And at a distance, someone may be 3,000 miles away. It makes no difference, the distance that you're away. But it depends on the energy that is being expressed. Physically, it does make a difference. Emotionally, if you have an emotional imagination that's very active and very expressant, you may be intensifying and sending your view to people and you don't know you're doing that. They may not, even if they do receive that energy, they may not have a clue why they're acting in a particular way. I tried to make it fairly clear that if you can allow yourself to calm that down, and this is very difficult because you don't understand or know that you are intensifying and contributing to that other person acting out in a manner that relates to your reaction. And they may do that with other people unless they are conscious of something happening inside of them and then attempting to soften that down so they don't really react in the same way that maybe they've practiced all their lives. Unknown to them, of course, because not everyone knows the exact images that they have been about the exact images that they have been practicing in a very practical manner all their life to be the person they believe they are or need to be or should be because dot 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 dot, whatever that may be. So it is very important to understand that you are not only a physical form kind of wrapped around in cellophane. Not like that at all. It's really penetrable. And that's hard for us to understand. And thank goodness we don't have the wherewithal to utilize that energy to hurt anybody. However, as you grow, more energy is collective within the whole of your structure. And unknown to you, you may not be very productive to another person in your thoughts. It's so simple to say thoughts have wings, but we have an emotional element in our relationship with our physical, mental constructs that we do not understand fully. There's a whole bunch of material written about the physical, mental structure and nervous system, and some in the emotional structure, but not in relationship to affecting other people. Unfortunately, we're very capable in our news and political backgrounds, all thematic backgrounds, of cultivating images and forms that you try to sell to people because we are those people that they're sold to, and we start understanding and believing based on those themes being of value or not of value, depending on what side of the fence you happen to be on. However, we're not very cognizant of the intensity or the drama, one could say, that is expressed and how it causes difficulty in other human beings. And fortunately, I would hope that we begin to do so and then start to slow down our relationship with our personalized versions of how the world should be or shouldn't be. Never mind the world, I mean, just your neighbor and your friends and your not so friendly friends. So I'm saying that because the concept of wrapping energy around the physical form has been used by yogis in the past, and very positive thinking yogis I'll touch with that one first, as an idea that will help increase the psychic capacity of an individual. And this, fortunately or unfortunately, does help to some degree, but it also helps the reflex of individuals to be sent out in directions that might not be helpful to other human beings. This is a very important thing to begin to understand, because each one of us has particular views that we think are necessary in our world, so that we can feel more comforted by being valued by us and by others. This is very important. Trying to understand this is not easy, because it implies the importance of beginning to be aware of the inner relationship that you have, that everybody has, that I have, that anyone has, with how they function internally, and slowly beginning to attempt to observe it and not necessarily be pleased with how we function in relationship to others. So therefore, slowly, as we grow, softening down that natural reflex of all human beings to express themselves in a manner that maybe diminishes other people, physically, emotionally, or mentally. This is very difficult for us, because we are trained to do the exact opposite, because it elevates the value of us by doing so. And it is counterproductive. Why? Good question. Because you intensify reflexes around your body that thicken energy, and those become natural tendencies, and even you bake them a little bit by adding to them with that intensity, and you become more able to do these things, and you cannot allow yourself to diminish them, because they are, in fact, almost controlling you. If you think about this a little bit and engage with life, you'll begin to perceive that sometimes you act in a manner that, if you're honest with yourself, that you wish you hadn't acted that way. And these reflexes that have been what you might call your stable engagement with life for your protection and defense, even though they're necessary, in many instances, they are not automatically necessary and valuable for you or for others. So ease it a little bit. Ease it off in the understanding of how things are. And by the way, since energy is the physical body, emotion, and how you engage mentally, one could say, at this level, the physical form is a good mirror in perceiving subtle levels within it, which includes all levels, including a higher state, so that you can begin to perceive where those chakras are. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter, if your perception is real in those levels. Early on, we begin to perceive just energy in and around us, but in and around us and through us. Those are the levels that we attempt to engage with and understand exists. Because once you perceive them, they exist. Prior to that, you don't know if they exist. These energies from higher states are often called all kinds of things, and they can be called spiritual energy, Holy Spirit. They can be called any kind of thing that comes up in your head, but they are energy, and you are energy. The difficulty with all of this stuff is begin to allow yourself to engage with an understanding that is different than the one you have. If you walk down the street, for example, your body is only this big and that deep and that tall. So if someone is 15 feet away from you, you know you're not affected by that. In a single glance, you are affected by that. Your personality form can be out there 6 or 8 feet, 3 feet, 15 feet. And in one single thought, you think of an old friend who lives in Paraguay. And in fact, in that second, you're with your old friend in Paraguay. Your emotional disposition stretches and reaches out at every whim of every beckoning that you have in your view. This is really difficult for us to. Thank goodness we're not very good at it. The place would be a shambles. No offense to anybody. We don't know how to soften things down. We are habitual creatures. We have veins of energy that are used more often than we can ever imagine through these energy fields. And they're only there because they're repetitive. You do this if you have a way of looking at things and something comes up against it. There you use the same kind of interaction. If you're afraid that somebody doesn't like you, you have the same reaction. It's a vein that is used a whole lot. If you have a concern, that vein becomes arterial if you have reactions with respect to others or yourself. To soften that down is to soften the fear, to ask for help. I know this sounds weird in a Western orientation, but you can begin to feel that flow coming in for the purpose of helping. It's helping what? Helping to soften down that venal structure, arterial structure within that energy field. And I mean only that's because you use it often. It started to look a little bit like that. But we don't have to see it from a physical point of view. We can watch it from a physical point of view. We can see it from a mental point of view. We can watch our emotional reflexes and attempt to soften them down. It's difficult for us to do that, though, because we're used to being elevated, kind of bumped up by how we engage with others. And our reasoning means that we're valued by that. Being aware all around us, in and through us, and within us, even within our past engagements with life, and we're seeing some of them and trying to understand some of them, broadens our capacity to perceive and understand where we place our values. And we often miss that we're really valuable in a deeper sense than what we judge ourselves to be valued at. This is so important. None of us are not valuable, from the worst to the best. But we'll make up our minds about that one. And I suppose in our kind of way of dealing with things, this is sometimes necessary. From our points of view. But it is important. For example, this exercise that sometimes we've talked about, where you're sitting in a chair and meditating, be aware of the chair, be aware of you, what you're thinking about, what you see, what you react to. Be aware of the room. And even one time I said, be aware of your city, be aware of your country, be aware of all your friends and your enemies and the world, and ask for help for them. Some of you have tried this exercise at least once. If you are exceedingly able and try this exercise, you may be helpful or not helpful. If you could allow yourself to be as if you were as small as a pinprick and as important as a pinprick in a second or two, and ask for help for the whole of our planet. Since you don't consider pinpricks to be very important, energy might be able to operate through you for a purpose beyond our understanding, as opposed to thinking that we help the world. Well, you're not going to get any kudos if you do that kind of thing, that's for sure. Our dilemma is that we do not understand the full ramifications of becoming exceedingly able for the help of others. We do understand that if we become able, our stock goes up. And this is the basis that we have for engaging with our world and being valued in our world. This is what we've been taught since the time of our birth. All of that's fine. But there is, at the same time, an ability to engage with higher states, even though that is frowned upon now, for the purpose of being helpful to you, to others, and for increasing your understanding beyond what any of us have. We're in a process of growing, not a process of doing something, getting there, whatever there is, and then being valuable. We're in a process of being valuable, as well as others, and others being as valuable as us, and us being as valuable as them, and beginning to help beyond the personalization that our system is set up to value legitimately for the planes that we happen to live on. So I would suggest we go as slow as we can, recognize the small increases in our willingness to help ourselves as well as others. I'm sorry to say, in a kind of way, but glad to say, that as we grow, the act of growing enables us to understand that helping is recognized from the inside out, not a lot from the outside in. Because there is a lot of misunderstanding about the idea of helping from the outside in. However, we can help ourselves from the outside in and engage in a broader manner that helps us to understand that we are not only small dots, but we have the potential to be truly helpful within us without anybody ever finding out that that's possible, that we have done something to be helpful. This is, of course, different than how we take a look at things, and I understand that. And I don't think it's easy to do. None of us do well with this. But we all are attempting to grow. And if you do want to grow, it's worth being okay with you by allowing yourself to be a grower too. It's slow going, but what you see and what you gain remains, stays with you, and continues, and touches things in your life where you never thought those things would be touched. Helps you to understand you a little bit better in a positive way, not only through the critical mesh that we have constructed for the purpose of protecting ourselves against the flesh of others who are as fearful as we are in not being recognized as a reasonable person. I hope that helps a tiny little bit. I'm sure I've forgotten. I wrote some stuff down here, and let me just take a look if you don't mind. Toshi said, on occasion we have wrapped the energy around the body, for example, when we wrapped around our head, sort of like a mummy wrapping. I don't remember doing that, but I did discuss one particular yogi background. Normally I get you to wrap above the head for a purpose that relates to turning the system on so that all of the centers can be affected by a higher state, a higher chakra state, even if it's only a tiny little bit. Let's see. Yes, I did say we could use the body as a mirror. And you will, by the way, feel energy rushing through your physical form much easier than anything else because the physical system is set up, really, the sensate system is set up in the womb to perceive movement. In other words, movement is vibration or energy flow. If you throw something, there's an energy flow. It's a force moving. And the system is set up to perceive that. But also, the emotions are set up to perceive it as well. And the mind is set up to engage with every cell in the body as a perceiving system. It is a mental aspect. And you can perceive, and I'm not, when I say perceive, I'm talking about watching what's going on inside and noticing. Watching what's going on outside and noticing. I'm not saying attending really acutely to see whether there was a change or not. That way you're focusing on bringing to bear your personalizations that relate to the images that you have constructed already as an individual calling themselves whoever, Ron or Jack or Jim or Mary or Jean or Susan, doesn't matter. It's what we do because that's normal for us. So there's no negation in it. It's recognizing that's what we do. And we can slow that down a bit. However, once we start to slow it down, wow, these intensities that we have in our energetic system start to bounce back. And it's almost like as if you couldn't stop yourself from saying something or doing something. These things are really there. And they are part of what we've constructed as images. So they're not external from the image, they're internally involved with the images that we've created. No negativity attached to it. Just, oh my gosh, this is what I do. Let's see. Yeah, this is just repeating. There are bars of pressure or based on energy repetitions or intensity repetitions, expressions that are repeated over and over again. By the way, we don't see these very well. They just happen and they're automatic. They're set up to be there for a purpose related to the protection of the individual's constructed system. And they're all just systems. We're all just systems. Let's see. Is there another question? Could it be helpful to wrap energy around us versus moving it through us? I think I just talked about that. The idea, Toshi, of wrapping energy around us. Oh boy. Of course, it depends on what you call wrapping, right? Of course, there's no doubt about it. We try to do the pump. It's kind of a wrapping. Drop the energy down. Our brow gets a little stronger, our throat gets a little stronger, our chest gets a little stronger. Circulates around the body and upward. In other words, it makes a pathway so that energy can flow that is around and up and around the body that's normally held in one of the chakras. Energy can be held at the root, gonad, and solar plexus because we're used to taking energy from those structures. Even our intellectualizations are usually pulled from the solar plexus. Root and gonad linking goes on almost immediately. So in a kind of a way, I don't want to say that isn't an important thing, but In a kind of way, we kind of do that. And energy can come up the front and around the back. Chinese have found this out many, many, many thousands of years ago when practicing their form of meditation. And they said that energy coming up the front and down the back helped them to live longer. Energy going down the front and up the back helped them to be able to function better. These are observations, hopefully based on experience. I normally let that be and say it could be true, it may not be true, but nonetheless, that is helpful. I found these things out. It's very interesting when you're doing this kind of work. Often these kind of things occur to you, they happen in you, and then I've always had the idea that there's probably not very much new in this world. So since they started happening in the late 60s, I started to look for places where they may exist. And because there is a tremendous amount of linking that goes on universally, and that can be positive for us or not so positive. In other words, you tap into things that have been there before and some things that haven't been there before. And who knows, maybe they're in other timelines or other civilizations for all we know. And so these things are there in the universe, and you sometimes can tap into some of this stuff. So anyway, I did find out after about 5 or 6 years, I found out that the Chinese background, Taoist background, had some of these ideas. And so did the Hebrew background. When they moved their bodies back and forth like this, I found that out about 6 years, maybe more than that, maybe 15 years after this kind of thing was being practiced by some folks that I know. So there are many things that can be there. Of course, our brain can get a hold of these things. Our personalities, this idea, and I don't think anybody else has it. It's typical personality stuff. Our personalities are tricky, and they attempt to be, because that sets a value on them. And that's fine. The trick in this one is know that that's what you're doing. And it's then helpful to you as a growing person. At least you understand about one aspect of your own engagement with life. This happens all over the world. And it's fascinating that that happens like this, because it implies that if other people are doing it, that effect literally is transmitted to others in our world. There are many things, positive and not so positive, that are transmitted. And we just pick them up like a sponge. And we engage with them while thinking that we're of great value because we engage with something. Do what you can to grow internally and be respectful of other people and their engagement with them not being able as well as being able. If a person is attempting the best they possibly can to understand what's going on inside and try and soften it down, it may not be apparent to some that that's what's going on. And therefore, They might downplay another person, meaning lifting up their own petard. The problem with that is that you become reflexive in that. You're almost hurt because others are growing in some way that you can't see. But there's no reason to be hurt because the very fact that you're also attempting to do the best you can, while they may not be able to do that well, they are still doing the best they can. And therefore, trying to understand a level of compassion that we can touch, perhaps ever so slightly, enables that compassion to be spread to others who are similar to us in our attempts to grow. And it can be then engage and broaden out an understanding that others may have, even though we don't even know them. This is a very strange way to talk, I know that. Nonetheless, it's an energy engagement. I have to thank Toshi very much out in California for sending this question in. It is a heart-rendering question. And our engagement with attempting to be aware just a little bit more than we are used to is not an easy thing to do because we're impacted upon by what we normally do as an energy form and by others who know that we normally do that kind of thing and have an expectation that we should do that kind of thing. And they are not helpful to us in our growing process either. So you, whoever you may be, attempt not to be that person who is not trying to be helpful to another person in their growing. The best you can. I know it's not easy for us. So I think now what we're going to do is we're going to meditate for about an hour, roughly. And Marlene has some nice music that she's going to put on. And hopefully it will not be garbled. Apparently there had been some garbling of music that we had on.
Let us know if there's
Let us know if there is a problem, and we'll try to deal with it the best we can. Thank you, everybody. Please take care, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in a week or so. Take care. And just begin to do the balancing and grounding. Take care of